Good morning. Welcome to today's Daily Word. I'm so excited to give you this message today because I believe that God has a finishing line ahead of us into this next season, a season of joyfulness, a season of celebration, a season of abundant blessing. And we're so close to that season, but it's always at the end of one season that we begin to grow tired and weary. We begin to think that what we're experiencing right now is all that life has to offer. And so it's really hard for us to stir up our faith and to believe for something new or to believe for change. Now, I also find it interesting that many times when God is doing a new thing, there's no point of reference. There's nothing to compare it to. So instead, what we want to do is we want to go backwards. We want to go back to how things used to be, because we don't know what lies ahead. And so for those of you who feel like this is speaking right to you, then today this message is specifically for you. In Genesis chapter 26, we read about Isaac going back to the wells that Abraham had once dug up. And he wants to get access to water to feed his animals. And so he goes in chapter 26, it says, starting in verse 17, "So Isaac moved away from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. Isaac reopened the wells that had been dug in the time of his father Abraham, which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died, and he gave them the same names his father gave them. But you see, while he's experiencing redigging these wells, he comes across some troubled situations. It says that, skipping ahead into verse 20, it said some of the men from that area begin to quarrel with Isaac, saying, you can't handle that well. You can't dig up that well. That well belongs to us. And so he named that well Esek, which means dispute. How many of you have experienced some disputes over the last several months? Because they disputed with him. Then in verse 21, they dug another well, but they quarreled over that one. So he named it Sitnah, which means opposition. We've seen a lot of opposition in our country. Verse 22, he moved on from there and dug another well, and no one quarreled over it. He named it Rehoboth, saying, now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land. Rehoboth means room. So you've been experiencing some troubled times. If you, like me, it almost feels like the well where I'm being dug up. You're being dug up inside, and it's painful, and it's almost like surgery. You feel when it's all over, you feel empty. I want to encourage you that if you feel empty, you are right where you're supposed to be. What do you mean, Missy? I'm supposed to be filled with joy and all those things that the Lord promised me. That's coming. But when you feel empty, that means there's only one thing left, and that is to be refilled. God is emptying you because he wants to fill you with himself. You see, like the wells that we read about in the Word of God, when you dig deep enough, eventually you hit springs, you hit water. When God digs us out, and it is God, it's opposition and quarreling that's coming our way. It's experiences that we're having to endure. It's perseverance that we're having to learn. But as God allows those situations to dig us out, it leaves more room for him to fill us with an empowerment of his Spirit. You see, the more we're emptied, the closer we are to hitting rivers of living water. So now is not the time to give up. Now is not the time to faint. Do not faint right before the finishing line. God is about to close the chapter on this part of the book and move us into a new season. Don't give up yet. One of my favorite authors is Christian author C.S. Lewis. I know many of you are familiar with him, but I've got to read one of my favorite quotes from him. He says, imagine yourself as a living house. God comes in to rebuild that house. At first, perhaps you can understand what he's doing. He's getting the drains right and stopping the leaks in the roof and so on. You know that these jobs needed to be done, so you're not surprised. But presently, he starts knocking the house about in a way that hurts abominably, and it does not seem to really make any sense. What on earth is he up to? The explanation is that he's building quite a different house from the one you thought of. Throwing out a new wing here, putting on an extra floor there, running up towers or making courtyards. You thought you were being made into a decent little cottage, but he is building a palace, and one that he intends to live in himself. God is doing a remodel on you. Like the well, he has to dig out some things. It's all flesh, it's all temporal things, but he's putting more of himself in you, and you are going to come out of this season not a better version of yourself, but you are going to come through this season looking more like Jesus. Share in the sufferings of Christ. There's nothing like it. And you'll be able to look back and say, you know what, it was good that I was afflicted. So be encouraged. Do not give up. Now is not the time to quit. Now is not the time to give in to depression. God is doing a new thing in you. And he is going to get the glory, honor, and praise. A new season is right around the corner. Be encouraged today. God bless.